Peter?
Hi, I'm Peter Klitte and I'm from Marula Media. It was very enlightful to hear all of you, and it's great that there is an organization that will lobby for under 18s and all of that. But my question is, how hard and to whom are you lobbying? Obviously, just seeing SARS is not going to do the trick. You're going to have to lobby with ministers and DGs to try, and not just from the finance industry, also from the health departments, business and legislations also. So my question is, what will you guys be lobbying for? For no under 18s? Obviously, stricter restrictions. Just move the speaker a bit that way. Okay. Um, yes, that's it. Also, for stricter regulation, because of you don't know what you're going to buy when you walk into a cafe. You don't know what is in that product that they buy from, countries like China and all these other countries. So I definitely agree that there has to be legislation, but the right legislation. So how are you guys going to, as an organization, approach this, and what is the timeline?
Thank you, Peter. Maybe we can take some more questions or comments from the floor. Kurt, feel free to make an intervention from the floor as well. And yeah, maybe let's get responses from the main table, and we'll come to.
Thank you for that question. All of our work is on ensuring that the vaping industry is regulated. As the speaker said previously, the industry is not opposed to regulation. We actually want to be regulated because that's really what is going to help us to professionalize the industry as well as protect consumers. So in all our lobbying efforts, and I believe the fact that the bill has not been signed is due to our intensive lobbying efforts. So we have a multi-pronged approach where we don't just lobby politicians, you have to lobby regulators, you have to lobby business counterparts. So there are many supporting industries that the vaping industry is in. So we are in postage as well, for example. There's marketing, there's those industries that support the vaping industry to ensure that we are able to trade. So from the onset, what we've said is the biggest challenge we have right now is at a consumer level, where you need ambassadors for these products. So it's one thing for me to go into a meeting in Parliament and talk on behalf of the industry. Oftentimes you'll hear people saying, of course you're going to say that. You represent the interests of business, which is why it's important that you always have a multi-pronged approach where business comes in and it ventilates the issues of business. And then you have independent experts who are in the tobacco harm reduction space that speak a different language. I cannot sway them and tell them this is what they need to say. They need to speak based on the science. And then you have consumers who say, I speak from my personal experience. I used to be a smoker. I'm currently vaping. So you'll never ever have a one approach, that will work for this kind of work. And we've always said that what is important to us, and I think Dr. Letlape mentioned information, because quite interestingly enough, the first time I ever went to Parliament, I was surprised to find that half the people there did not know what I was talking about. I assumed that because there was a bill that we were going to debate, they knew about it. But because of misinformation and the media oftentimes not giving enough room for us to speak about these products, the people who will make the decisions, unfortunately, are not capacitated. So this kind of event is so important because on one hand, I can continue and go speak to the regulators, educate them about the industry, but you need the message to be reinforced. And the best way that the message is reinforced is through the media as well. So at any given point, you have to have a multi-pronged approach to ensure that this this industry is taken seriously. And there was a question about regulation. So one thing that we do agree with where government is concerned is that these products cannot be made cannot be accessed by young people. What we have then done as a proactive industry was that over and above, Barry spoke about age gates and the signage and shops, etc. We've put forward to regulators to say, how about we look at a licensing framework similar to what we have in alcohol? Is it going to work? We don't know. But what we are saying, let's open up conversation. Let's start looking at potential solutions to these problems that we have. And I believe that way, then we are able to come up with a policy that is fit for purpose. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to ask. Oh, and standards, sorry, he's reminded me. A very big development in the vaping industry has happened recently. The South African Bureau of Standards has approved South African vaping standards, and they are now open for public comment. Closing date is the 16th of July. And that is huge because it speaks to product safety. It speaks to those people who are making their vaping e-liquids in their garages. We are saying we cannot have that because these products are inhaled by individuals. We need to ensure that we are selling products that are of the best quality. But again, we always say you buy from reputable stores because they have all your letters of authority when the likes of the NRCS says these products we know are of good quality. So don't ever buy products from flea markets and those kinds of things. But what is key right now is that we have reason to celebrate because for the first time, South Africa is going to have vaping standards, and that's a biggie for us.
Thanks, Sandra. I think there's a follow-up question.
Just a suggestion. I think because of you are in the industry, maybe you should invite journalists to maybe do a documentary or an in-depth article, because you guys know where the Hong Kong, like they call it, the products are. So we can then send people in to buy the products, get it tested, to show that the impurities that's there. And I think that will also instill a bit of more brand loyalty because of safety from trusted suppliers and shops, like those being associated with the Vapor Product Association.
Thank you, Pete.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, Antoinette.
Antoinette, yeah.
Sorry, Antoinette, I did not see you.
I just want to know, with this tobacco bill, what is the most damaging section of the bill? I mean, what do they want to do with the bill that will impact on the industry? What is the worst part of it?
I'm not sure if I should ask or in the next round, Mr. Modise.
I think let's get a response to Antoinette's question, and we'll get some more interventions questions from the floor. So, yeah. Dr. Alklam?
I think it would have been easier if your question was reversed. That what is the good part of the bill? And the answer would be none. What is the bad part of the bill? Almost all of it, from the preamble to the end. For example, in the preamble, without putting it in black and white, they say everybody must quit. And it does not address those that can't quit. And this problem is not about the 70% South Africans who don't smoke. It's about the 28% who smoke and can't quit. So and when you analyze it, it's not helpful to the people it's supposed to help. It just becomes like a cult document. It then praises the WHO and makes them equivalent to our constitution, which is a violation of what people went through to come up with that constitution, when it does not recognize people who smoke. The next biggest issue is lack of differentiation. If you look at the slide that was shown about cigarette being the most harmful way of getting your nicotine, and nicotine replacement therapy as the least harmful, there's different degrees of harm, and the bill does not recognize that. It says anything that is not nicotine replacement therapy will be treated like a combustible cigarette. And that's written into the bill. And that's one of the major flaws, that it does not differentiate. There are many other aspects where it turns every home into a place of employment. And you got to put up signs of where people can smoke, where they can't smoke. And people are not aware of those small things. So once it's passed, the cops can come in and force and arrest you. Because if you have a domestic, you are an employer. And you now have to put placards whether the domestic can smoke in the toilet or in the corridor or in the garden. If you haven't, you have not designated your employment space. The issue of what is an enclosed space. If you have one wall in the felt without other walls, that's an enclosed space, by definition in the bill. So I can go on and on. So there's no differentiation. There's also no ability to inform. Because those of us that are health activists, if you want to educate people about these things, will be violating that bill and will go to prison. It criminalizes smoking. It criminalizes the industry. There's sentences ranging from 3 months to 20 years. So it's criminalization of smoking. On the other side, we want everybody to grow dacha and produce cannabis. And we're decriminalizing like hell, and we want to industrialize. And we want to turn an industry into underground. So I mean, there's so much that is terrible in that bill that is not worth the piece of paper it's written on. But the key issue is lack of differentiation, saying everything is the same. If it's not a tablet, it's considered as a cigarette, and it's to be regulated like a cigarette. So the taxation framework is terrible, because if you can't differentiate, there'll be no access, there'll be no affordability, there'll be no quality, and people will not have a choice. And there's no ability to educate, except that the products are different. So I don't know if I've summarized. The only good thing about the bill is that it's black ink on white paper.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I just wanted, Kurt, if you don't mind, just from a consumer point of view, just what she had asked about what is wrong with the bill, or if there's anything that's right from a consumer's point of view. Kurt Yeo is one of South Africa's leading consumer activists that represents an organization called Vaping Saved My Life. So I think it would be good to hear from you, Kurt.
Good evening, everybody. I have to agree with Dr. Letlape. I think the only thing good about the bill currently is it hasn't been signed. The biggest issue is the differentiation between combustible tobacco and non-combustible tobacco. And as Dr. Letlape has correctly stated, the preamble talks about nicotine being dangerous. Now, if we really, really want to consider nicotine as being dangerous, then we have to question why the World Health Organization has considered it as an essential medicine on their essential medicines list for nicotine replacement therapies. So nicotine, it starts off at the very, very beginning as a lie, that nicotine is not harmful. It's addictive. And obviously there is an old adage in medicine, and doctor, you can correct me in there, the dose makes the poison. And that applies to everything in pharmacological and medicine. So nicotine in the doses that we use is not harmful. So the bill starts off with a lie and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And Dr. Letlape is quite correct. If you just look at section 2 of the bill, section 2(1)(a), I'm quite versed in all of this, it talks about enclosed spaces. And then the definition of an enclosed space is one or more walls or a roof made out of any material at any permanent position. Technically, that's an umbrella. Smoking under an umbrella can fetch you 3 months in jail. So when we last start looking at the real critical parts of this bill, the information that's provided, the way that people will be treated, is going to be detrimental. And I agree with Dr. Letlape again. Sorry, Doctor, I'm a big fan. Is that it literally doesn't address the very people that it needs to help. I agree, we need to protect non-smokers, non-vapers, the youth. I agree 100%. That's probably the only thing I agree with the bill is the age restriction. But everything else is a complete and utter mess because it's actually not talking to the people that are suffering, that cannot quit smoking and will eventually die. Here's a horrible statistic. In the time that we've been sitting here having a chat, 2,700 people around the world have died from smoking. 8 million people die every single year. When it comes to people trying to quit smoking, only 4% are able to do it without assistance. And according to the FDA, it can take up to 30 attempts for someone to be successfully quitting smoking. No wonder we have a smoking problem in this country because we don't have cessation services, we don't have cessation support, we don't have the medications, we don't have the therapeutics. And now we don't have, or they're going to try to remove safer alternatives. Can you imagine if we had this argument or these discussions around HIV and AIDS? If we had these discussions around other communicable diseases? It really becomes quite a serious issue. So that's why I think this bill is really wrong and it doesn't deal with the real issues, and that's helping people quit smoking at the same time as preventing people from uptake. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Some further inputs, questions from the floor?
Thank you. Mine is a question, and I'm not a journalist. My name is Calvin. To the panel, based on the evidence that you presented to us today, why do you think that we ended up with the bill as it is currently? And why is government pushing ahead with it in the current form?
For one reason, the WHO is the primary reason why we have the bill that we have. Because the WHO doesn't see people who smoke, and it pretends is they are anti the industry. But the main issue is that they don't see people who smoke. And when you look at third world countries, they seem to look at the WHO as a gospel. What they say is gospel. And the problem emanates from the WHO. I mean, a few years ago, they gave an award to the Minister of India for banning vaping in India. And that's how the WHO operates. And that's the primary problem. And when you look at OECD countries, where there's capacity for self-determination and agency and making up their minds, they don't listen to what the WHO says. They look to the science to regulate. You go to the US, FDA. There are products that have been approved by the FDA in all categories. There are vaping products approved by the FDA. There's smokeless products like snus approved by the FDA. There's heat-not-burn products approved by the FDA. So all these alternatives to combustion, they've asked for the evidence from the manufacturers. It's been scientifically evaluated and it's been accredited with appropriate claims that can be made to the public based on the evidence that has been put forth. For example, some of the products can talk about a reduced exposure. Some can talk about a public health benefit. Some can talk about a reduced risk. All these things are based on the evidence that has been provided and has been evaluated by independent people. The unit that looks at tobacco in the US employs more than 11,000 people. So just understand that if you're going to go that route, it's intensive and it requires resources. In the UK, they have vaping acceptable in the national health system. They had a swap program that was launched last year. where they said to people, come and swap your cigarettes for vapes that will be provided by the national health system. If you go to Sweden, we've spoken about Sweden. If you go to Japan, they allowed heated tobacco products into their market in 2015. They've never seen a more rapid decline of tobacco use. And what they've seen is the alternative products displacing cigarettes, but the nicotine market coming down, not going up. Gateway hypothesis has been debunked. So the major problem for our government is that it looks like we sit in Africa and we think a brain is only a sex organ. We don't use it for other purposes.
Thank you, Doc.
If I may?
Yeah, yes.
It's a very, very important question when it comes to policies. A policy is supposed to be written by South Africans for South Africans. But you look at this bill and you compare it with every other bill that is going around live in Africa. They are similar. How is that? Because local context has to be, South Africa is not Uganda, it's not Kenya. We've got our own problems and we know how to solve those problems. So it's almost a copy and paste approach that's taken by the authorities. I don't know why. But it's also concerning that countries that we're mentioning here that have curbed the smoking rates have never been commended by the WHO, although they're reaching their targets sooner. They have never taken a stance to say congratulations to Sweden, congratulations to New Zealand and Japan and the likes. Yeah.
One of the things that you need to understand is that anywhere where there's been prohibition, the smoking rates are going up. Everywhere where they embrace risk-reduced products and the continuum of risk, the prevalence is coming down. And the health of people who smoke is improving. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. One of the things that I will do in Parliament is to ensure that we have a government that does not take sides. A government that says, bring us the evidence, that listens to both sides and makes decisions based on science in the best interest of the population. Now, when you do tobacco regulation that is progressive, that should be supported by health professionals, it's one that improves the health of people who smoke. That should be the lens through which you look at appropriateness of regulations that come through. So one of the things that I will ask for is to ensure that the industry comes, the association comes, Council Against Smoking comes, but everybody has to be listened to. And the two sides have to sit at the table, as is a tradition in South Africa. Not one that says, if this one comes into the room, I'm not coming into the room. That will not be tolerated because we want the facts to speak for themselves and that we make policies based on evidence and science.
Thank you, Doc. There's a further question, Franz?
I'm afraid we are really out of time, but I've got 2 or 3 quick questions that I wanted to ask. I think this is a very interesting conversation that we are having, but I think I want us to debone this elephant, and so that it's clear, are we then saying comparatively, I know there is Hubly, I don't know in your technical terms what you call it, there's Hubly, there's this e-vapes, and then there are nicotine like cigarette, cigar, and so on and so on. Which would you then say it's the much better or the safest? And I think I heard Dr. Puti saying and you'll correct me, saying that there is no any nicotine in e-vapes. You'll correct me because I think I heard something like that. But now I'm wondering if that is the case, because sometimes when you go buy this, the refills, you'll have like a 0.0 nicotine, 0.01, and so forth and so forth. What does then that mean? Thank you so much.
So this just to correct there is in e-liquids that are in market, there is some without nicotine. The majority contain nicotine because that's what people need to get off smoking, or that's what they're looking for, the kick of the nicotine. So I think the appropriate thing to say is that we need to bring science to the forefront. The way that most frameworks that are working are that they look at the harm reduction or the harm continuum, the toxicant continuum, and they'll actually apply excise according to that. First thing. So what the industry and the panel here is saying, within the same bill, it's not that you need to do a new bill for vaping. It's already inside the tobacco bill, but you need to differentiate between the products within the same bill. If you look at the bill for New Zealand, it's completely treated completely with all the elements that are there, but within the same bill. So it's two sections. Yeah, one encouraging for these products, but putting the right things in place, like standards, as Asanda said. It's important to have standards. It's important to have nicotine limits because higher nicotine limits are harmful. It's important to have warnings. It's important to have age restrictions and so on. But certain things like display, you cannot have a display ban on a cigarette because you want to encourage it. People need to see it. And preferably it has to be next to the harmful so that people are able to say, oh no, I want that one. What's that about? People need to be educated about the alternative at display, at point of sale. That's what I can contribute.
Can you just on the Hubly
oh, yes.
just to explain the difference?
Yes. So Hubly is an interesting story. Hubly contains tobacco, right? So it's completely different from vaping. And the number of constituents in Hubly are staggering. Yeah. So it's a completely, and I'm glad you asked that question because it seems, you know, when you speak to the regulators, you know, to the portfolio committee, during these public health hearings, they don't know the difference, or they know it, they're just ignoring the difference. So there's a huge difference between Hubly or water pipes, and you can see on the spectrum as well, it's all the way to the extreme right versus e-cigarettes, which are to the far left.
Sorry, just your question as well, Perry, if you don't mind, the percentages in nicotine. So there's 0.2, 0. Just explain that for us, please.
Okay, so there are various strengths that can be used in e-liquid, various strengths of nicotine. Now you've got the two types of nicotine. You've got baseline nicotine, and then you've got nicotine salts. So the reason that we have zero nicotine e-liquid is that either for people who have managed to wean themselves off nicotine, but they still want to just, before they quit completely, they just want to keep inhaling something until they get to the point where they say, okay, I know I'm off, I know I can quit, and they can stop. And that really is the goal of the industry. You know, people will say, yeah, but, you know, do you sell to under 18s? Well, we don't need to sell to under 18s, okay? Because there's so many smokers that we need to convert from using, from cigarettes to get them off, okay? And yes, we're not going to sell to under 18s, but I guarantee if they can't get vapes, they're gonna go and get cigarettes, easy to get. They're gonna use marijuana, easy to get. We know how many of the schools around the country have a problem with marijuana, easy to access. So what do we need to do when we need to get them off? We're essentially going to start with a very high level of nicotine. If someone walks into one of our stores, you can already hear that they're a smoker. They walk in, the voice, you know that sound of someone who smokes heavily. How many packs of cigarettes do you smoke a day? No, I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. We can get them off cigarettes immediately. We can stop that person right there and then. They will never touch a cigarette again. But we've got to put them on a very high level of nicotine. So what might we do? We'll use 50 milligram nicotine salt e-liquid. And we'll put them on a small device, and they'll start feeding that nicotine habit, and they'll get rid of the nicotine. They won't have withdrawal symptoms, but what they're getting rid of is lighting that cigarette and holding it in their hands, and now they're getting the nicotine fix. It's then that the nicotine levels start to reduce. Then you might go down to a 25 milligram nicotine salt. Then you might move to baseline nicotine, what we call mouth to lung, 18 milligrams or 12 milligrams, and eventually they'll move down to 6 milligrams and then 3 milligrams, and hopefully at some point to 0, and then quit altogether. For us, there's no greater pleasure than someone that's quit.
Can I just say that? Just to give you a simple example, you have people that take 8 teaspoons of sugar in their coffee. And if you're asking them to quit from 8 to 0, it's not going to happen. So the way they would quit, they would go to 7, and suddenly they don't miss the 8 and go to 8, and they're able to titrate down. So vaping allows people who smoke to be able to titrate themselves down and become less nicotine dependent. Now, cigarettes are an all or none phenomenon. It's 8 or nothing. And that's why people can't quit, because you can't move that way, and the relapse rate is high. And clinical trials have shown that you have more people that quit when you use electronic cigarettes than when you use the traditional nicotine replacement therapies that we give them. So you are able to titrate yourself. So the issue of the concentrations help in that regard. Just like in alcohol, you have 0% beer to 47% alcohol in spirits. So vaping offers you, as a consumer, the ability to know and reduce those levels, because this is a chemical dependence, and it is dose sensitive and dose related. So if you are able to titrate yourself down, you have a better chance of weaning yourself off the dependence of this highly addictive chemical.
Thank you, Doc.